Welcome back for another battle report. This time it's Empire of Sunstyle versus Warriors of the Dark Gods. This time I'm playing against a friend who provided me with the pieces that I needed to build this Warriors of the Dark Gods list with the two behemoths, the Wasteland Dragon and the Veldrog Elder. And yeah, he just came to pick up the pieces again, and we just played a battle, just to play a battle really. So here you can see my army list. He never played against Empire, he said, so I decided to give him a little taste of it. It's still an army that I'm not really set on the different choices that I made, but I'll just walk you through it. So I've been staring at this War Altar option for some time now, and I am not really convinced by it, but I decided that I really wanted to try it out sometime. So we have a prelate on a War Altar. He has the Alchemist Alloy, he has a shield, plate armor, he has paired weapons with shield breaker on them just to get through armor, and the Crown of Autocracy. I think you really need some leadership in your Empire army. He has the Locket of Senna just to scare off some characters and challenges. Then we supported with a wizard on alchemy actually. So the thought here is that the prayer of the prelate can also give you flaming attacks. And then with the alchemy attribute you very easily get a reroll to wound in. So you have actually two bound spells of your Altar of Battle that will give you a reroll to wound. It's backed up by the rest of the army, so you mostly see the big block of heavy infantry, and that's going to be one of the blocks that will be standing beside the Altar of Battle. The other block is a block of 24 flagellants. So with the 6-inch bubble of the Altar of Battle, I think you can only supply 2 units reliably with the hatred that it provides. It doesn't provide it to Knights of the Sun Griffin mounts, unfortunately. Otherwise that would have been the ideal target. So I think a core unit can work quite nicely with that, and flagellants obviously because they already have battle focus themselves also. To back it up even more is a steam tank, just to have 2 pieces in the army that can just take a charge no matter the conditions. And then there's just some support, Empire support, that's kind of normal to put on the table. Then for my opponent, he has a Warriors of the Dark Gods army. He has a Lord on a dragon, so that's really epic. He has a Barbarian Chief on a Chimera to pair it up. And then in that type of army, he definitely needs some way of protecting your characters, so he has two big brother giants. And the rest of the army is just basically meant to push forward and hopefully arrive at the opponent. So he has 20 warriors with halberds and Zealot's banner, 4 chosen knights with Stalker standard, which I think is really important on this unit. 6 Veldrogs. I think he could have used maybe a banner of discipline on those, just if you ever want to operate them on the flank, even though the Chosen Lord also has 18-inch reach. Before we start with the battle, we have some army picks again. So this is my Empire of Sunstyle, and these are some nice looking pieces of my opponent's Warriors of the Dark Gods. So here we go into the battle itself. We were just playing battle line without any objective, just to have a little bit more of a casual game. So going into this matchup I was quite confident actually, because well, I have 2 cannons in my list. My opponent has quite some gigantic models, or also the Barbarian Chief on Chimera. He's still towering presence. He has wings, so I get an extra wound if I do some wounds on him. And generally, yeah, Empire is kind of able to whittle down Warriors of Chaos quite effectively. But this is also the first time that I'm trying out this army list with the War Altar, so I didn't really know what to expect and how well it would perform, obviously. Because in the end it is still a model that is 750 points. It's a lot of points just for something that just holds up your enemy's army. So in the end it actually felt like a quite dense army. So I only have 1 unit of light infantry that can shoot, I only have 2 cannons, so my ranged output isn't that overwhelming after all. So I still do have the Reiters, of course, with the brace of pistols, but I wouldn't really count them towards gun line capacity. Yeah, so this is going to be my deployment. I was very adamant about keeping the war altar within 6 inches of both the heavy infantry and the flaglands. And you also want to keep the light infantry within range of the parent units. You want support units within range of the parent units. So in the end, your deployment is really important for this type of army. And I don't know if the writers actually bring this army a lot, because you do want to delay the opponent, but I also have some spare points still in the hero slot. I think maybe a captain on a Pegasus would be better, because he can get a better armor save, grind a little bit better. So yeah, that might be better actually than the writers. Yeah, so this is going to be my deployment. This is my opponent's deployment, as you can see. So the Wasteland Dragon is all the way in the top left, hiding from the cannons behind the Giants. The Barbarian Chief on Chimera is behind the impossible terrain. So yeah, my opponent is hiding his pieces very effectively with that regard. I put the Knights of the Sun Griffin all the way on the left to be able to put some pressure on his chosen knights, so that they cannot go towards my main lines uncontested. And otherwise, yeah, I was quite happy with how this turned out. So my goal is going to be to just whittle down my opponent with the light infantry, use the flagellants just to well, as a roadblock really, and then have the Imperial Guard with the support unit to mop up any remaining pieces. And the heavy infantry on the left is meant to counter well, depending on what the chosen knights do, the chosen, maybe some giants. Because they are heavy infantry with halberds, the giant, if he charges, he strikes first, so I actually don't really want to do a lot of wounds on him before he goes in. Because then he will have 5 attacks. I will have, if I go in horde formation, I will have 28 attacks back at him if I get to fight an extra rank order. And then I have still the 3 attacks from the Marshal BSB with Death Warrant, so if I'm within range of my altar, I'll have Battle Focus Hatred on the attacks of the Imperial Guard. Or the Halberds, I mean. And then I should do like 28 wounds with 5s to hit. I would do enough wounds to just kill a giant outright. So that would work in theory. But let's see how this goes on the table. The steam tank is there to just provide a bit of a pain in the ass to the Warriors of the Dark Gods. So Warriors of the Dark Gods, they do have a lot of access to Strength 5 in their army. Strength 6 is a bit more difficult. And that is mostly what I kept in mind when I was deploying the steam tank, and I didn't realize that the Giants also have Strength 6 with AP3 because of the Giant Club. Because normally people don't take the Giant Club on these models, in my experience, just because they are kind of the generic upgrade. So people like it to have these army specific upgrades. So you often see this, for example, this tribal war spear on Warriors of the Dark Gods Giants. But these are upgraded with the Giant Clubs. And the Giant Clubs, they actually bring a lot to the table when you have to crunch through a steam tank with a giant. Yeah. So this is my turn 2 now. So the War Altar is going to charge into the Feldrox together with the Flagellants. And I was just testing out this army just to see what this army can do, what would happen if I do stuff like this. So in hindsight, it might have been even better to charge the Barbarians with the Flagellants and have my opponent have the choice of maybe going into the Imperial Guard with his Feldrox if he wants to. But then my Flagellants could have charged into the Barbarians, they could have overrun and reformed afterwards. And that would have taken a lot of time, so maybe this was the right way to go. Maybe I should have just charged in the War Altar. But the bubble of the War Altar is incredibly small, so it's only 6 inches of aura. Like what they did with the parent and support units is to change the distance from 6 inches to 8 inches, and you really notice the difference when you're playing with the army. That this 8-inch support range makes an incredible difference with respect to 6 inches. So I think that for a 750 point War Altar, 8 inches would also not be too much to ask for. Anyway, so the Flagellants, they went into the Feldrocks, and I'm trying to cast some magic here. So I do have a Wizard Adept in this army list, and I do have my War Altar, so I do channel for 2, which is kind of sufficient. It would have been nice if I had another channel though, and I actually only do have 2 spells that really can get high rolls for the dice you put in, because I only have the Wizard Adept. So the bind spells, they do give some value for money, but yeah, once again, it needs a lot of dice to start working. And with the 2 dice, your opponent still has a 50-50 chance to dispel it with 1 dice, and is quite guaranteed to dispel it with 2 dice. For the 3 dice, the odds are a little bit less in favor of your opponent, but still, it's only a bound spell on power level 8, so the opponent might as well just dispel it. And then, yeah, the bound spells, the 5+ Aegis in melee is really good. The reroll to wound is really good. But you need another really good close combat spell in order to make it work. So in this case, in this game, I actually took with my alchemy wizard, Quicksilver Lash and Molten Copper, just because I saw so much armor on the table, I thought. And then it turned out that his Barbarian Chief only has like a 4 Aegis and a 5+ Ward save, or a 4+ armor save and a 5+ Aegis. So that wasn't really worth it. So I definitely should have chosen different magic here, because in this game the magic didn't really benefit me too much. So on the left you see me with the Pistoliers, with the Reiters, going in for a shot on his general. His general has the weird stone. If I just knock it off with the Reiters, I'm wasting a Reiter shot rather than a cannon shot. And I find that hugely beneficial. So now the cannons can actually more effectively shoot at their targets. So this turn I had 2 cannons to shoot, and one of them shot at the Barbarian Chief on the flank and missed. It's to wound roll, I believe, and the steam tank actually misfired in the previous turn, so it couldn't shoot this turn. Yeah, it's playing with cannons. So you only have a very limited amount of rolls, and if it goes well, it goes really well, and if it goes wrong, it goes really wrong. So yeah, so the Knights of the Sun Griffin are still on the left flank, still threatening my opponent. So my opponent charged in with the dogs on my Reiters, and I was still kind of confident that I might just draw it there or make him lose by 1, because I still have my my heavy armor and my mount, so I have a follow-up armor save. Yeah, and otherwise he just goes full in basically. So the Barbarian Chief on the right, he went for the other Reiters to Reiters flee away. The Giant, he joined the War Altar to start grinding it down. And the Flagellants, they did a good job on the Feldrocks, but I only removed half of them. And this War Altar really doesn't have a lot of damage output. So I was thinking about whether I should or should not actually give the Prelate on the War Altar the Shield Breaker, as he has now. Because you're looking at, with paired weapons, 3 attacks at strength 4, and that's not really great. It's only really valuable once you factor in the Locket of Sunlight and Challenge, but I think you'll usually just end up having a champion. Which is fair, because then your opponent will only have 2 attacks at strength 4 against your War Altar. I think you do need the Locket of Senna on this model, just to scare off crazy characters. Maybe once in a lifetime get this matchup where you have a character that is really potent, so that you can do this crazy thing of getting his stats. But the War Altar itself, I believe it's really meant to just stick around. Because with Resilience 5, 2 up armor, and a 4 up Aegis, it is a tough model to get down. So maybe in this list you should actually play a Wizard Master on Cosmology, so you have Touch the Heart and the other one. So you can recover some hit points here and there. Because you have a Steam Tank, you have a War Altar. Obviously it's not as effective as Druidism, but maybe a Cosmology Mage might be nice in this army. Yeah. Yeah, so far I lost my riders on the left flank, but the Mitre and Knights of the Sun Griffin were able to charge in. And I'm just setting up for his turn, where, as you can see, he removes the Steam Tank through all the different attacks he has there. And my heavy infantry is getting ready to receive a charge. So my War Altar hasn't had any wounds up till now, so I was quite confident about this, actually. So what he can do is he has the Chosen Knight on the left, his Dragon on the left, and his Giant on the left. So I was figuring that he can just, if he wants to, he can charge in with all of them into my heavy infantry. I just have to make the terror check, which is a re-rollable discipline 9 check. And it's minimized because I have the Steadyman order on the unit. If he does so, I can counter charge with my unit on the left. I'm gonna have also a charge. I'm gonna have a big flank. I'm gonna have 3 ranks. I'm gonna have 2 standards. I'm gonna have a BSB, and I'm gonna have a lot of attacks onto a giant, which is a juicy target, and I can possibly challenge away his dragon. So what in the end turns out to be the case is that he is able to just fit in his Chosen Knights in the gap between the building, and he has a charge on my detachment, and here I make a big mistake by fleeing with the detachment. So this allows him to redirect into my heavy infantry, and yeah, that was definitely not a good choice. It's just that the plans that I had for this charge turned out so different, so I should have taken a little bit more time to think about it, because actually if he charged my detachment, it wasn't that bad. So he charges my detachment, he gets probably in. If he doesn't get in, it's also not the end of the world. Because then he's stuck in the middle of some ruins, and then I still get a counter charge with my heavy infantry. But if he does get in, he's looking at a unit on which he has to do 15 wounds in order to break my steadfast, 16 wounds even, because as long as I have 1 rank, I can count the ranks of the parent unit within 8 inches. And then with the parent unit, only a giant and the dragon would have arrived, so I could challenge out the dragon, kill the giant, and send my opponent home with a very big negative combat modifier. So that would have been the preferred choice, rather than to flee away with this detachment. Because in this scenario, everything basically goes wrong. Because now he has his Chosen Knight champion who can accept the challenge of my unit champion, so his dragon can roam freely onto my heavy infantry, and he gets some more attacks onto the heavy infantry. And to make matters worse, we start at the combat at the War Altar, and in 1 turn he suddenly does 5 wounds to it. So yeah, I don't get my hatred. I don't get my ward save in melee, because that was the bound spell I actually got off this turn. So that just, yeah, that really bumped me out basically. So the dice that I'm stacking up next to the heavy infantry are just the wounds that I'm getting, that I actually wouldn't have been getting if it was just the giant and the the Chaos Lord going into the unit. So this was a really big mistake on my part, just to flee with the support unit. In the same sense that it was actually a mistake of my opponent to charge in with this with the chosen knights onto my support unit. Because as you can see, if he had just charged in like this, I still would have gotten a counter charge with my support unit on the flank of his unit, but just the amount of wounds that he's ramping up onto my parent unit is just insane. Yet, provided I would have had the Aegis save still on the unit, it wouldn't have been too bad either, because now in total he did, let me see, 27 wounds. So with an Aegis that would have been just a little bit shy of 20 wounds. I probably, I would still have killed the giant. So he wouldn't have had a thunderstomp, so he would have done like 15 wounds, which is a lot. Definitely a lot, but it's probably not enough to, it's definitely not enough to break me at least. And then I have a counter charge with my Knight of the Sun Griffin into his, oh no, I just moved him up this turn, sorry. But then I would still have just a support unit on the flank of his chosen knights, and yeah, I wouldn't grind him out necessarily, but it would have been a situation where I would still have a counter charge with my Knights of the Sun Griffin over time. But now this the way it works out, he just removes the unit very easily, and then everything kind of goes bad. Yeah, so this was the moment that was kind of the deciding factor for me to see that this really didn't work out as planned. But on the other hand, I'm not dead yet, so I still have some stuff to fight for. So these light infantry with the marksman's pennant and the artificer in there, they really get some work done, up till the point where some riders flee through them and they fail their panic check. Because my general is gone, so I'm only discipline 7 all around now. Except for the Imperial Guard, they have discipline 8 from themselves, I believe. So my opponent does charge into the Imperial Guard with all of his units. He has to maximize with the Barbarians because they have smaller bases than the Feldroks. And yeah, my wizard is just chilling there on the corner. So my wizard does have the Destiny's Call, so it's a less attractive target for my opponent than the Imperial Guard. Or at least, yeah, that's what he thinks at the moment. But it's the wizard that also gives the unit Stubborn. So it's actually quite a nice combination of having Destiny's Call on the wizard with 3 wounds, just to keep the unit stubborn. And once again, if you have a Cosmology Mage in here, then you can still recover some hit points. So I think, yeah, maybe I should just try it out with a Cosmology Mage in there. I really don't know if I need to write those in this list. Because, yeah, you might want some chaff, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe some rangers can also be enough. Yeah, yeah. So this is what the game has turned into. It's looking quite grim for the Empire. So my opponent, he charged in with this Wasteland Dragon into my Knights of the Sun Griffin. However, the Knights of the Sun Griffin, they turn out not to be real slouches, as they do 3 wounds back to the dragon, I believe, or 4 wounds even. So that was a really, really bad luck for my opponent there. And he had already gotten 1 wound earlier in the game, so it's just left on 1 wound. And the Imperial Guard, I was actually quite happy with the matchup as it was, because I have just 10 Imperial Guard and a full support unit knocking up some Barbarians, and then my opponent has a couple of attacks from his warriors and 1 Feldrak that's in base space with the Imperial Guard. But the Imperial Guard, they have a 3+ armor in combat, so they don't mind too much. So I thought that I should have grinded him down there, And then the dice happened, and then my Imperial Guard got grinded down to the man, basically. So that was a bit of a shame. But then again, it's dice. So on the left flank, my Knight of the Sun Griffin pokes down a dragon. So I shouldn't really complain about the dice. I can't complain. Yeah. So over the course of the game, I still managed to shoot down the Barbarian Chief with my cannon. But otherwise the cannons didn't really do a lot. It's, well, obviously they still zone a lot. So keeping my opponent's dragon away from my army, keeping the Barbarian Chief away from my army. So they do prove their value every single time. It's just that the cannons are really dice dependent pieces. Yeah, by this time, basically my entire army is gone. We tally up the points, and it turns out to be a 16-4 for my opponent. So well played to my opponent. I made some very vital mistakes, but it also shows that maybe I should just stick to one army a little bit longer for some time, because it's just mistakes that I do remember of having to not make, that could have been easily prevented. Okay, so anyway, thank you for watching, and yeah, see you the next time.